All right, welcome to Airwave, and I'm Joseph Souza. We've got two very special guests today who both went on a program where over the summer they went to a completely different country, and I don't know about you, but Livy was not able to use her phone. She had to speak solely in Spanish. You went to Japan, and so my first question for you guys is, how did it feel coming back?
For me, since I spent the entire time speaking only in Spanish, I forgot a lot of words in English and had a lot of trouble just simply communicating. That was one of the biggest problems for me.
Yeah, I had the same thing happen when I got back, and I was like trying to call my mom at the airport because our flight got delayed, and like nothing was like forming in my head, and like it was like a lot of reverse culture shock. And they talk about that in the program a lot, where like you come back and it's just you have to get used to being in America again. Like it's so different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what was like your day-to-day life living in a different country?
So for us, we went to class every Monday through Thursday. We had 4 different classes in the morning, and then we'd get back home for lunch at about 2. We'd have a siesta, which was great, like a little nap time. And then after that, we'd have whatever activity all the host moms planned together, and then dinner at like 9.
Yeah, for us, we had school Mondays through Saturdays, and the whole time would just be like, we'd have 4 classes too, and it would all be about language sort of stuff. And we would eat lunch at the school and everything, and then we'd get home around 6 o'clock at night because we have after school clubs that everybody did. And sometimes we would go on like little trips after school, and we go home around 6, and then our host families would make dinner, or we'd go somewhere with our host families, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for us, we didn't have school on Fridays because we went on an excursion, so we went to like Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Motul, different cool cities around Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what are some of the other activities you guys did besides just, going to school and then living with your host family?
We did a lot of cultural stuff so that we could learn about the culture. Like, we did a 2-day trip to Kyoto one day. Mm-hmm. And then on Saturdays, normally it wouldn't be school, but we'd meet at like a train station somewhere, and we'd go to like a day trip somewhere in Japan and just kind of plan those sort of things. Like, we went to a baseball game one day, so it was that sort of stuff.
After school, a lot of the activities we did with all the families, we went to the movies a lot because there was actually air conditioning in the malls, and we didn't have air conditioning in our houses. And so we went to movies a lot in Spanish. And we went shopping, we went out with our families. We never actually went out to dinner because the host moms just make such good food. It was never necessary.
So do you guys feel like you picked up a lot of language, like you learned a lot going through the program?
So much.
Yeah. It was like, whenever I was there, it didn't feel like it because I was like, I can't understand you most of the time. But whenever we got back, definitely going back into Japanese class and being like, wow, I understand all of this now. And like, seeing how far ahead I was of like everybody else was definitely like, oh my god, I actually learned stuff.
Because like by the end of the time, like you were dreaming in Spanish, thinking in Spanish, everything was just in your language, and that was especially cool going back to class and just like knowing what's going on. It's been really cool.
Yeah. So you guys felt like when you came back to class, you were just like eons ahead of your peers in terms of.
I wouldn't say eons. We definitely have native speakers in our classes, but much further ahead than I was at the end of last year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then, so, going to a different country and all that. So, how did you feel about, going to a family that was completely foreign? Like, didn't speak your language, like, you didn't know who these people were. Did you feel like you guys were family by the time you came back?
Yes, I was very nervous about it initially. Like, all we got was, like, a very vague information from an email and like a picture of them sitting on a couch, and I was like, okay. And so when I got there, I got really, really close with my host mom. I didn't get super close to my host dad or host sister, but it really felt like a family by the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like the email was very vague. I was like, wow, great, I guess. But before I was so nervous on the plane going there because I was like, oh my god, how do I talk to them? How do I do this, and this? But by the end, it was like they were really understanding like the whole way through the program. And by the end, they really did feel like a family figure, because they're the only people you have there, sort of. So it kind of like you build a really good relationship with those people, and they really take good care of you.
So you guys mentioned that the emails were very vague.
Yes, they are.
What were your expectations going in?
Well, theoretically, the email would be great because it was like a form that they had to fill out on their own. It was like, what kind of foods I like to prepare? And my answer was literally just like traditional Mexican food. And I was like, that is so not helpful.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things I was most nervous about going into it because before it, I hated Mexican food, at an extreme. But I mean, I learned to like it, and my mom was an excellent cook, and everything was fine. But going into it, that was the thing I was most nervous about. So I saw the question, I was like, oh, cool, I'll get to learn what food we're eating. And then it was just traditional Mexican food. Cool.
Yeah, going into it was the most nerve-wracking part probably because it's oh my god, I don't know what they're gonna be like. I don't know how I'm gonna do communication and I don't know how I'm gonna adapt, but it was so much better than I thought it would be. It was so much more relaxing. And by the end, I didn't want to come home. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to come home at all. I was like, let me stay. Yeah.
Okay, so I know you didn't have your phone. You were forced to use a flip phone, and that was one of the restrictions you had.
Ours weren't even flip phones. They were just
track phones.
Yeah.
Track phones?
Yeah. And ours didn't work. Ours worked for maybe the first week, and then all of our phones were broken, and they wouldn't give us new phones. So we could occasionally call, but only if someone called us. And the calls cost way more than the text costs, and so it would just use up all of our money on spam text, and then we couldn't do anything.
Yeah. We didn't have track phones. We got to actually use our phones because Japan doesn't have track phones, and they wouldn't work at all. But we had the pocket Wi-Fi stuff that was really strict on what we had to use and everything. So we only got 10 gigabytes of data per month. So it was a little less restrained on the phone stuff in Japan, but I wasn't on my phone at all. There was no need for it.
With ours, we left our phones with the teachers, and then we got 30 minutes twice a week to use a computer, but we didn't have computers in our house, so we had to walk 30 minutes to an internet cafe, or if we walked to the shopping mall, we could actually get air conditioning in the Office Depot. So you had to pay for your internet, and exactly at 30 minutes, it would time out. So if you didn't finish sending your email, you were kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
So what other restrictions were there with the program?
So there's the language restrictions.
Yeah.
We had to speak the target language the whole time, no English. We also no alcohol, no drugs, even though the alcohol is legal in Mexico, still not allowed.
Yeah.
What else? It's kind of the big stuff.
Yeah, that was the big stuff. Especially the language.
Yeah.
The language thing was
the language is what makes it such a good program, and it's why you learn so much through a specific program.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there weren't any other restrictions. I know, speaking to the foreign exchange students here, they've got some very obscure ones, they're not allowed to jump on trampolines, or they're not allowed to do dangerous.
Yeah.
So dangerous.
That was sort of a thing.
Is that?
We had one thing. We weren't allowed to swim in cenotes. That was a really specific rule. It was not okay, at all. We might die. And all of us were we did not get it. Because, I've swam in cenotes before, and I am still here. And we were all please. And they just kept saying no. And it's 110, 105 degrees every day. And it's why will you not let us swim?
Yeah.
But
what are cenotes?
it's from a sinkhole, and the water collects, and you swim in that.
Oh, that does sound dangerous.
Yeah, that does sound pretty bad.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess a weird one in Japan was that we couldn't change out of our school uniforms whenever we left school. We had to stay in it till we got home. But that's more of a Japan rule than the program rule. And we broke it once and got in a lot of trouble. But it was, that was a really weird rule for us because we don't have uniforms here. So it was oh, okay.
So you mentioned school uniforms. Were there any other customs that you guys had to get used to that were just completely alien to you?
One of the hardest was just the times that people ate.
Yeah.
We'd eat breakfast a normal time because we had school at 9, so we'd eat around 8 because we had a 30-minute walk to school every morning. But we'd have lunch at 2 or 2:30, and then dinner at 9 p.m. And that's just super, super weird. And lunch is the biggest meal. Yeah. So you usually have a soup, and then meat and beans and cheese, everything. It's a huge meal, and then dinner's just a snack.
Yeah. Yeah, in Japan, a lot of the custom stuff is so much different than America that it was it took a lot of getting used to. And there's just certain manneral things that I had to kind of learn while I was there. Don't stand too close to somebody whenever you're introducing, because then they'll feel uncomfortable. Or like in Japan, you can't say things directly, you have to go around it. And it was just a lot of like cultural aspects that were like a lot different than America that you have to get used to it.
Yeah, for us it was like the opposite. Like you like give your mom a kiss on the cheek when you say hello or goodbye, things like that. And we went to church, and that was really different for me because I'm not Catholic and I have never been in a Catholic or Spanish church service. And yeah, different things like that. And you have to be like a lot closer to people, and you have to be really direct, so like the opposite of how it was in Japan. So like here in the Midwest, we like go around things, like we're not very direct. But like you couldn't like go into your room and shut the door, or else your host mom would be like, "What's wrong with her? Is she okay?" So very, very kind of the opposite. Yeah.
So what was it like going to school and learning different? What did you guys learn exactly? Did you learn like the core subjects like mathematics, social studies, or was it?
We did literature, linguistics, culture, and grammar. Those were our 4. Is that what you guys did as well?
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah, it was intense. Especially the first couple weeks, it was like, oh my gosh, my brain, it's like melting. It was not good for the first couple weeks. Yeah. But it got better as you went on because you got into the groove of everything. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it helps a lot with the language. Yeah,
definitely, because you learn things that are useful.
Yeah,
while you're there. Because a lot of times in Spanish class here, like we learn very useful things, but there are like words that I didn't know.
Yeah,
like I didn't know how to say like, oh, my cup is empty. Like didn't know what the word for empty was or full. And so like there's things you kind of like learn in class that you can then like transfer into.
Yeah, it's very like direct. Like you learn things in class that you can use that day. So that's how probably you learn a lot more too, is like you're learning stuff that you use like that day and like you can use for the rest of the trip. So it's like a little better that way than in like classes here where like you'll learn it, you'll memorize it, but you never use it. So it's that sort of thing.
So I know Japan, it's often almost like stereotyped that they have a very like strict and like rigorous schooling system. Did that transfer over to your schooling?
A little bit. It was like we couldn't be certain places at certain hours, otherwise teachers would be mad, and then our teachers who were like teaching us, like the program directors, would get in trouble for it. So it was like we had to be in class on time, otherwise we would get in trouble. And like, but other than that, they were really lenient with like at least us, because it's a thing in Japan where when you see a foreigner and they don't expect you to know everything and to be like right on the rules and everything, like they'll be more lenient with you. But with the other, like with the Japanese students who were like native there, you did see a difference sort of with that, where they were a lot more strict with the Japanese students. So it is a right stereotype, but for foreigners it's a little more relaxed in that way.
That's kind of interesting. So you had school like in the at the same time as like actual students.
Yeah.
See, we didn't, because like over the summer they didn't have classes, so we took it at like the IFSA Butler office, and so we had all of our classes there.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys feel like you met a lot of new people through the program? Like, did you converse with other students who were doing the same thing as you?
Yeah, I met with, there's a lot of people in Japan who are learning English, so whenever they see foreigners, they get really excited and they just want like to talk to you all the time and everything. So like I have like a bunch of like Japanese friends now that I talk to all the time, and like they helped a lot with the trip, like meeting friends and that are native there, because they'll take you places and they'll teach you certain things that you might not have learned without them, and it makes you feel a lot more comfortable in the school that you have. Yeah.
So we didn't have very much contact with kids our own age, because like we didn't go to school with them, and most of our host parents were older, and so they didn't have younger kids. So most of our friendships are just with people like from the same program.
Yeah.
So when you guys went into the program, you were not allowed to speak English.
No.
How hard was that to adjust to? Like
we got off the plane and they were like, okay, no more English.
Yeah.
And then like immediately getting off the plane, we went to baggage claim, and then they were like, here's a group of Hispanic women, find your mom. Like they held up papers like written in pencil of your name. It was like very just hectic and chaotic, because we were just like, this is it. Like, so we kind of had comfort in like our friends, but then at that moment we had to leave, and then we had 3 days without seeing anyone from the United States.
Yeah, it was in Japan. We got to the airport and there was like one family who was there, but the rest of the families were waiting at the school for us. So like right when we got out, they were already in Japanese, and they were trying to like tell us stuff about our bus cards and everything, and I was like, I don't understand. But it's like we went on the bus and everything, and we got to the school, And like it was like the hardest part probably of the program is adjusting to the new language, because it's like whenever you get there, it's like boom, new language, and it's like, oh god, like it's like you forget everything for like a good while, and like your host family also has to adjust to you, because whenever I first got there, they were speaking fast, like they were like just going like they normally would, and I was like, yeah, like I understand this, and it's like they figured out that I don't, and so they had to slow down a lot, and like in Japan there's a thing where like there's different dialects, so they had to speak in like a standard dialect because that's what we learn in classes, and so they had to kind of relearn how to say certain things for us. So it was like on both parts, it was like the language barrier was there, like they had to get through that.
We had so where I was staying, there's a lot of like Mayan influence, so a lot of the moms used like different Mayan words, so we learned some new Mayan words. That was cool. But our host moms were really good at like talking slower and enunciating a lot more, because like in Mexico, like we were kind of like the project for the host moms, but like my host father and my host sister, they would still talk like fast, and like they didn't really get how inexperienced we were. I felt like that was a very common thing.
Yeah, and sometimes they would think that we are so inexperienced that they have to teach us stuff that is really simple, and they'd be like, this is a car, this is how you say car, and I'm like, thanks. It's something that they get to a point where like, oh, do they know this, and this, and they'll adjust to it to be like, let's just teach them everything, and it's like, okay.
I guess that's better, but
yeah.
Okay, so you guys basically went in cold turkey when it comes into like language, and at the high school, our foreign exchange student program is like nothing like that. You know, they're allowed to speak English, or they're allowed to speak their native language, and they're encouraged to speak English as well, obviously. Do you think that this program's methodology is more effective because it forces you to be, in the culture at all times, and it almost alienates you from the world in a sense?
I think they're just very different programs. Like, I think ours is effective because we do, like, it feels like time stops. And you don't really know what's going on back here. Like, I was gone and I came back and Visco girls were a thing. But, like, here with the foreign exchange program that we have here, I feel like it's just, since it's so much longer, and you're going to our school in our classes, like, I feel like it's probably equally as effective. It's just very different.
Yeah, it's just like a very different concept that they have, because they're in actual like core classes, learning like math, social studies, all this kind of stuff. But they really just, in our program, they really just put you in the language only. And I think that was a little bit more effective in learning the language. But the program here, I think, is probably just as effective for the people, because they're around, they do like, especially this year, they're trying more to get them into clubs and like get them into programs that will help their English a lot, and they're meeting people that know both of the target languages. Like the Japanese foreign exchange students, I was just talking to them, and like we speak in English and Japanese, so it kind of helps them, oh, this word means this in English. So it's the same kind of effectiveness, it's just a very different process. And they're also here for like a year, and we were only there for like a month. So I think it's, in that kind of way, that's why it's a different process, because they only have a limited amount of time with us, so they're pushing us more into the language, but they have a whole year to kind of collect, like, oh, this is how I say this, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for coming to our podcast. It was amazing having both of you.
All
right.
Wow.
Stop the audio.
Okay.
How long was that?
21 minutes.
21.
That's crazy. I was going to ask another question.